Good afternoon and welcome to Building a Winning Team. I am not Trevor Blair. I am Tori Albertazzi, Managing Director at Blair Search Partners, and I'm going to take the host seat today. So we have a jam-packed episode for you that's highly anticipated after our fluke a couple of weeks ago. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Today, we're exploring one of the most critical and often emotionally complex transitions an organization can face. That's the departure of a long-serving, beloved CEO. And our guest today, Kristen Diggs, is the Chief Human Resource Officer at San Diego Youth Services. And they are in the midst of navigating this monumental change. And part of her role has been to ensure the stability of the organization, fostering continuity, and preparing the organization for its next chapter. We have a lot to unpack today, Kristen. So welcome to the stage. Welcome to the show. And if you don't mind introducing yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Tori. And apologies for my technical issues 2 weeks ago. I'm all good now with the new laptop and everything is working. So yes, I'm Kristen Diggs. I'm the CHRO of San Diego Youth Services. I am in my 4th year at SDYS. I actually came out from Maryland in February of 2022. I came out to San Diego for this job. But I spent about 16 years in nonprofit HR before I got to San Diego. So really well-versed in nonprofit HR. And as we'll talk about, I was actually going through a CEO transition at my previous organization when I was interviewing for this particular position. So I have a lot of experience and a lot of comparisons to make between the two organizations and how it went. So super excited to talk and share how wonderful our leadership transition went and is going.
That's right. I think we should share the obvious that you are now 2 months in, 3 months in.
We're starting week 8. Yes.
Week 8. Nobody's counting, but here we are.
Nobody's counting.
So if we kind of take it back 8 weeks or even more, pre-search, once we heard of the news that your beloved CEO was retiring, this is a CEO that was with the organization for many years. So in your role and with, of course, input from the board of directors and the rest of the leadership team, how does one or HR ensure the outgoing leaders' contributions and deep legacy are appropriately acknowledged and honored, not only with the C-suite, but across the organization? So let's define that as all staff at all levels, your stakeholders. You're a community organization with a lot of community partners, donors. How did you navigate that to ensure that this change wouldn't be so disruptive, and not lose focus on the legacy that the CEO was leaving behind?
Yes. So many different things to talk about with this. And I think I just want to say by saying, I feel, and I'm sure our board of directors and our leadership team would say this also, I just feel really proud of how we handled this transition and how it's still going. We had a 25-year CEO who actually gave us a really long runway in his transition. So we were really lucky in that we could be thoughtful and intentional with how we transitioned. So we're 8 weeks into Jonathan's Castillo's, our new CEO, his tenure. And I think what I want to start with is just saying that the board just hired the right person. I mean, we just really got it right. And I just feel like we have not missed a beat in our services, and we will not miss a beat in disruption of services to our youth, which is our mission, right? The thousands of youth in San Diego that we are providing homeless shelters to and services throughout the county. So I think I mentioned that personally, I knew that this CEO transition was coming when I was interviewing for this position at SDYS. So it was really, kind of really great timing in that when I was interviewing, I was very deep into my own CEO transition at my last nonprofit. And that was with a leader that had been there for 40 years out of the organization's 50-year history. So same type of thing in that, we were exiting a CEO that, was his identity was kind of tied to the organization, and very similar to how it was with Walter Phillips, our recently retired CEO. So I felt like I because I had that experience, and because when I walked in the door of SUIS, like what was on my mind is how was I going to be able to prepare for this CEO transition, knowing it was coming. And I didn't know when it was coming. I just knew when I was going through the recruitment process that the recruiter mentioned to me, who was actually Blair, Search Partners, mentioned to me that, they were thinking about a CEO transition. So, I think it started when coming out of COVID, Walter was thinking about his retirement. And then it just so happened that my predecessor in HR decided that she was going to retire, and she had been here for 35 years. And then on the heels of that, our CFO decided to retire, who had been here for 20 years. And then we had two more senior leadership positions that were going to retire in our IT manager and our facilities director. And so, as much as Walter wanted to retire, knew that it was coming, he also did not want to leave at a time where there were so many other transitions happening in the agency. So, first thing I kind of learned about this agency was, Walter was such a selfless leader in that he put off his own retirement so he could see, all the other transitions happen, get the new staff settled, or get the structural changes done, make sure the staff was comfortable, the new people and positions were up and running, and then he was going to retire. So he was really intentional and thoughtful with how he planned out his retirement. So knowing that this transition was coming, I think, when I stepped in the door day one as the CHRO, I dove in and really made sure that the HR department and the organization was going to be set up for this major, major leadership transition of not only the CEO, but of me taking the place of the previous HR director, a new CFO, facilities, IT. I mean, there was so much change going on in the organization. So I wanted to make sure that, because I knew it could be bumpy with the transitions, is that I wanted to make sure we set up the HR department in a way that the positions and the structure was going to be effective in navigating this change throughout the agency. And that just meant, developing an HR culture immediately of trust and openness and transparency, so that the staff would know that I was going to be transparent with them, the good, the bad, the challenging, and that they could also trust me and see me and my team as someone that they could approach in confidence if they felt like something wasn't going right. So I think the first thing I really thought about in communication is that you have to take every opportunity to celebrate the accomplishments of the current CEO or the CEO getting ready to retire, while also getting staff excited for the future. Not what could change, because it wasn't necessary that we had to change the organization, but what could be built on the foundation of Walter's success over the last 25 years and how we can do better. So I just feel like, from day one, I just really was always thinking about what that change meant and how we were going to communicate, how the leadership team was going to work with the board to make sure that we were in a good place, because we had so much change coming in the agency.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
And one after the next, next. So with that, and I've heard a lot about the transparency and the communication and the trust throughout the duration of all of these C-suite changes that your organization was going through. And And recognizing too that with Walter having led the organization for 25 years, that's significant. And that means he may very well be the only quote unquote boss that some of your staff members have had in their entire career.
Most of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit and change, any type of change we are resistant to oftentimes. And there's a lot of anxieties, the what ifs, the speculations, the stories we're creating in our head. A CEO change is significant, having gone through plenty of those myself. It's, what does this mean to me? What does it mean to my program? What does it mean to the clients we serve? How did you navigate the anxieties that your team was feeling, whether it was real and vocal, or perhaps you all had to kind of sit back, assess, observe, and address proactively?
Yep. So first and foremost, I think our messaging from day one of when Walter officially announced his retirement is that you take every opportunity to communicate the work is not going to stop. Right? Like, we have our mission, vision, and the values that we're upholding in this agency. And that mission is our North Star, and we are not going to waver from that. So no matter who is at the helm of the agency, that we have a service to provide to the vulnerable youth of San Diego, and we are going to do it. And so every message that went out in all the different mediums that we'll talk about, there was always that message, is that, you know, kind of like, you as a staff member, you don't need to worry about this because this work is going to keep going no matter what. And I think that really calmed anxieties from day one, in that the leadership team and the board were out there in front of staff saying, nope, we've got this, and we are going to do the best job in hiring the new CEO and transitioning. And like I said before, that the agency is not going to miss a beat. We are going to fulfill our outcomes, and we are going to perform the services and take care of the youth like we have been doing for the past 50 plus years. So, you know, with that, with the long runway that Walter gave us to transition, we had a really unique opportunity to do it right. So the first thing that we did after Walter officially announced his retirement date is we hired on an executive consultant or leadership coach. And so she really started working with us about a year before Walter actually left. So Walter's last day was June 30th of 2025. So he just recently left. So we hired the executive consultant, and she really came in with two immediate priorities. And the first one was to conduct interviews with key staff to understand the current landscape of the agency and what the staff were looking for in their next CEO. So she was really thoughtful in working with the leadership team and deciding who she should talk to, staff that had been here for a while, staff that, you know, were fairly new. We ran the gamut of all the different levels. She did that. She then created a report. That report was then shared with the executive leadership team, as well as the board and the search committee, as they got ready to go out and recruit for the CEO. The second thing she did is that she really worked with so there's four of us on the leadership team: myself, the CEO, the chief financial officer, and the chief program officer. She worked with the four of us to ensure that we were aligned in how the pre-transition would go, and then how the actual transition would go. So first thing we did was our Gallup strengths. We each did it, and then she brought us together and she let us know, you know, what our strengths were, what our blind spots were, and how we could most effectively work with each other. And mainly it was concentrating on the three of us without Walter, how we could effectively work together, and what we needed to watch out for as we head into this transition. And then we did regular meetings with her. We met with her as a team of four. Then just the three of us without Walter would meet with her. And then we did one-on-one meetings with her. So we just wanted to make sure that and actually she's meeting with Jonathan 101 now. So she's kind of crossed over into the new leadership, meeting with the four of us, and also one-on-one with Jonathan. So I think she really did great and helped us process the transition, the grief that we were feeling, the excitement that we were feeling, because we really needed to present a strong, united front for our staff. Because if our messaging was, we've got this, the work is going to continue, then the three of us needed to get out in front of us, and the staff needed to see the three of us as the ones that were making sure that the work was continuing.
Well, and to that point, of the four of you, three were fairly new to the organization?
Myself and the CFO, yes.
Two. So how did you really navigate that? I love how the third party came in, assessed, interviewed, and made sure that you, the executive team, were on the same page, understanding strengths and weaknesses. Then there's the team. How many staff do you have?
We have 250. And actually today we're about 280 because we just brought 30 clinical interns in. So we're a pretty big organization.
So a huge organization, small leadership team, two of whom are new to the organization. During this major shift, you're taking time to really listen to staff. How are you ensuring that the staff are heard and incorporated into the process?
Yes. So when the board search committee was first established, so we had started out with the executive consultant already speaking to the staff. So they knew already, okay, we're going to have, kind of a say in this. And then when our board search committee was formed, their first step of the process was to hire our search firm for the CEO. And when they were hired, we had them come into the agency. They toured a number of our sites, and they also spoke to key staff. And again, we were kind of strategic in who we had them speak to, but we made sure it was a diverse, representation of our staff and our different programs. And so this way the staff could see that, they were going to have confidence in the recruiters, that they were really taking to heart what the staff wanted to see going forward, not just in a new CEO, but any directions that they wanted to see the agency go in, right? Like, what were we lacking? What were we doing good? What did we need to build upon? And then it was really kind of just luck that the day that the recruiters came out to talk to, they're from out of town. And so the day that they came in to talk to the staff, we also had an annual donor event that night. So not only did they get to talk to the staff and kind of reassure them, like, you're in this, we've got it, but they also went to the donor event and they were able to talk to donors and community partners and people that were supporters of the agency. So they could really get an idea of how not only SDYS was seen within our internal community, but how we functioned in the external community. And that was just, it was just really a great opportunity for them to come in and get all that input. And for both communities, externally and internally, seeing that, how much our board was putting into making sure those opinions were gathered before they actually went out and started their search. And then I think our board did through the search process, our board did great at really making sure our staff knew where they were in the process. And this started all the way back right after Walter announced his transition. We had an annual board retreat, and that board retreat was really dedicated to the board understanding from the executive's position, like what are the staff going to want to see over this next year from us as we do this search. And so they came up with this great plan. We had a communication plan, actually, that our senior director of marketing worked on with our board members. It was internal focused and external focused. And the internal focus was we have two boards. So the board chairs and then the chair of the search committee, they recorded videos that were sent out to the staff. So the staff knew what was going on in the search. They did emails when, important milestones were met. And so that were met. So the staff saw, they were getting updates directly from the people that were out there doing the work. And that was also combined with our cornerstone messaging of, but you guys got this, right? You're still doing the work and it's business as usual. So keep going. And then we also did some things internally, I think, that were really great in that right at the beginning of the year, so about 6 months before Walter left, we started a monthly executive update. So it was a 1-hour Teams meeting because we are so big and we're spread out all throughout the county. So it's hard for us to come together in person. So we started a 1-hour Teams meeting on the last Friday of the month where all of the executives give updates and to show the collaboration and what's going on in all of our different functional areas. And Walter's message really concentrated on what was going on with the CEO search at that time. So staff were getting it from all different areas from the board, from these monthly meetings. We have a really rich newsletter that we send out for the staff with the CEO message, and that always contained updates. So no matter how staff learn and how they collect information, like they were going to get information about how the search was going and how they were doing with it.
That's amazing and very, very, excuse me, very intentional. So I imagine there was a lot of time spent to really consider the format, the when, the how, the why, timing and approach is everything. And I'm so happy you shared with our audience a little bit about how complex San Diego Youth Services is. You are a major, major health and human services agency here in San Diego County, huge county, multiple locations throughout the county, very diverse population, very diverse staff.
Yes.
So did you find that there was one channel that was most beneficial or that you truly did have to really come up with an effective communication plan that hit people from different perspectives, different mediums, different forms, different messages, and it's not very intentional with who was saying what?
Let's see. So I think what I was thinking about with this question is that we're really lucky at SDYS in that we have a really great structure and a communication kind of flow chart, right? So we have 4 in our chief positions. We have directors across our admin department, and then we have directors of services, and there's 6 of those. And then we have program managers over our, I think, probably 18 different programs right now, and our different admin, fiscal, M&D, HR. And, just as a rule of thumb, I personally don't do anything. I don't roll anything out into the agency, a project, an initiative, without first discussing and clearing it with our directors and getting their feedback to see how we should roll it out to the rest of the organization, right? Because they are the ones that are out there working with the direct line staff on a daily basis. They are getting the feedback and then they're, kind of giving it back to us. We have a really great feedback exchange. And so I would say that whenever we would do messaging, right, so we have it coming out in all these other different ways, but that we were also really intentional with meeting with our directors, right? So we met with them monthly at different times, a program manager meeting, a director's meeting. And we, as a leadership team, also talked to them about how the transition was going, any messaging that we needed to get out there so we could understand from them, okay, yes, this messaging is going to work for this staff, but maybe you want to tweak it for this staff or this program. And then we were getting information from them about what was happening kind of in their programs so that we could take that information back, whether it was to our marketing department or to the board saying, okay, these are some of the things that we're hearing. So I I just think that we're really lucky, and we have that really great communication kind of flow set up where it's going both ways. And we really utilize that during that year of going through the search and the transition, because we know that we were getting information out effectively, and we were hearing what was coming up from the staff, and we were able to then address it. So constantly going back and forth with our communication.
And obvious is how fortunate San Diego Youth Services was to have such a long runway to navigate these, to really be intentional with the planning, ensure alignment across the organization, board members, staff, with the communication, the layout, with the search firm. We do not lead the search, so we will just name the obvious. But we continue to be major partners with San Diego Youth Services and have been very close with the organization. Obviously, Kristen, partnering on your search. So we do know the organization intimately. So with that, one of the great aspects of San Diego Youth Services is the amount of staff you have with lived experiences. So if we take that, let's talk about the candidate profile that you had as you were preparing for the search, which ultimately landed Jonathan. But what were key components you were hearing from your staff, or what approach did you take to ensure that all of your stakeholders had an opportunity to weigh in on the profile of the next leader?
So we work with youth. We have a lot of staff that are lived experience staff, right? So if we have if we're hiring for our homeless and unhoused shelters, sometimes we're hiring peer support partners that have actually experienced that themselves, or staff that went through the foster care system, or were involved in different family situations, and they're who we're hiring. And then we also have what we call our youth advisory board, which are a group of youth in the agency, and they're kind of like the voice of the youth for all the agency, right? So they're coming together. I think they come together about once a week now, and they talk about things that they would like to see happen in the agency if there's safety concerns. They're planning different events. So it was really important to also get, our staff's perspective and input, but also the youth perspective and impact. And so I think our YAB, our Youth Advisory Board, and the leader of that was really great in kind of taking that information from what she was hearing from the YAB back to the leadership team. So then we could then pass that on to our board if we needed to, or if we needed to discuss something at the senior leadership level and address that. We are a trauma-informed agency, which means that we don't ask what is wrong with you. We ask what happens to you, or what's triggering you or causing you to behave in this way. So we take that into consideration with every communication that we do, every initiative that we roll out. And that's why it's also really important for me to also have that feedback loop with the directors, because they are the ones that are super trained and trauma informed. And they're going to give me the feedback with any of those communications, and how that's going to come across. And then we make sure that staff know that there are multiple opportunities to come to us and give us their feedback, whether it's good or bad, or what we should change. So the climate surveys, an anonymous climate survey that we do once a year, listening sessions with consultants. I mean, and I talk about this when our staff come in at new hire orientation, is that we want staff to feel like they have multiple people and avenues to talk to in this organization. So whoever they feel comfortable with is who they should talk to. And that information will get ultimately to the right person where we can address it. And one thing that is really, really kind of a cool example is that we had a retirement gala for Walter a couple weeks before he left, and it was a big, I think it was 300 people. And we had some of our youth there that were receiving services speak. And Jonathan was also able to attend because he was getting ready to start. Actually, I think it was the gala was like the week before he started. And I remember him telling me that one of the young people that were receiving services um, in the agency came up to him and said, "Not that you asked, but I'm going to tell you why the young people love Walter and how he has made an impression upon them." And that was really great for Jonathan to hear because, like, right off the bat, before he even started on day one, he was already hearing from our youth. And what was cool is that youth felt comfortable going up to Jonathan and saying that too. So I think it's just part of that culture that we have developed of openness and transparency, where that youth went right up to Jonathan in his first meeting and said, "This is how you need to be as a CEO interacting with you."
Right. No pressure. And this is my name. Remember me.
Right.
I want to back up though. I love that story. Thanks for sharing it. What a great, I'd say we got to give credit to the organization for providing space and empowering the youth to have that confidence to go up to this new CEO that you don't know and share your thoughts.
Yeah.
You made mention of YAB and the Youth Advisory Board. There's a lot of organizations that are youth focused. So can you unpack that a little bit? Share with us what the YAB does, what are the intentions, and how are they utilized to really help achieve the mission?
Sure. So we have one of our staff members is 100% dedicated to the YAB and kind of coordinating them. And as I said, they are kind of like the voice. And so we have thousands and thousands of youth that we are serving at any given time. And the YAB, not only do we recruit youth that we think would be good in those positions in the YAB, but we also, if any of the youth see the YAB happening or the events and they want to join, we let them join. And so they get together and, like I said, they're kind of like the voice of the youth in the agency, and it's part of our positive youth development. So they could come together and they could talk. A great example is here at our admin building on Wing Street. Not only is it our admin building, but we also have many units where we house our transitional age youth, so ages 18 to 24 in apartments. And the campus, it was not gated. It wasn't really a secure campus. And so the YAB came together and they put up a proposal about gates for this campus and how, we could better secure and make them feel like they were living in a secure environment and they were being protected and taken care of. And so as a result of that, we put gates, locked gates all around our campus with codes and key cards that you have to get in. So they, really cool too, is that I feel like we're kind of like, walk the walk, talk the talk, in that our youth are now starting to even become employed in the agency. So whether that is with apprenticeships or our coffee shop that we have at a couple different of our locations, we are getting them into the agency. So not only are they receiving services, but they're also receiving real life experience and mentorships from our staff that are just going to help them when they graduate from our services. So it's just really cool to see some of these YAB members that were active in our youth advisory board, and they are now working in our programs as, those kind of like lived experience experts. And it's just a great example of how we're preparing the youth to thrive in society.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I failed to mention to our audience today that you're welcome to ask questions, drop comments in. If we can get to them, we certainly will. Leave them on LinkedIn. We can get back to them in writing if time doesn't allow today, but we're open to listen to your questions too. Now, Kristen, talking about the pace of the search. And again, recognizing the long runway, the time to integrate feedback from YAB, staff, other stakeholders. Let's start to transition to the selection process. Up to that point, no process is perfect. If you're willing to share, were there any areas of heartburn or lessons learned that you might be able to offer to our viewers today, many of whom are probably in your shoes at their respective organizations preparing for a similar search, or any bits of advice? This is from retirement notification to the search process. And then we're going to move over here shortly to talk about the onboarding and the exciting transition.
Yep. So lessons learned, I would say, and it's interesting because it really depends on kind of the leadership team and the people that are leading, but involve the people in the search that know the agency, right? So if your CEO is leaving, and obviously when he gives it a year notice, I mean, he's beloved. I think it really makes a difference to involve him and the leadership team in the search process with the board. I think that, who knows the culture and what's going on in the agency better than your leadership team. And so it's great to have them involved kind of from day one. Now, I'm not saying we do not want to hire our boss. No leadership team should be hiring their boss. So that is a board decision. At the end of the day, they are going to make the choice that they feel is right for the agency. And in this case, our board 100% nailed it. But involve them in the search. And we were really lucky in that when we had our final two candidates, our leadership team was able to interview the final two candidates. And we were able to give feedback and our perspectives on the two final candidates, which I think the board really took into consideration with the decision that they make. So I think that, and I think when you have a CEO that's in good standing in the agency and has been here for 25 years, like involve him in the search because he knows what the job is. And also San Diego is a small, for those of us that are in small communities where everybody kind of knows each other, probably more than likely going to know the person that is going to come into the role. And so we could have good feedback about that. So I don't know if that's a lesson learned or just something that I think is so important during a search like this.
Great. I have some questions coming in here, Kristen. So some of them align with where we were headed next. So I'm going to go ahead and share them here. Michael has a great question about beyond the usual listening tours and meet and greets. Have you seen any particularly meaningful or effective ways a new leader, not just a CEO, so you can speak to your experience here, has immersed themselves in the culture? And, I'm going to add to that, Michael, the culture beyond just the internal culture of the organization. There's so many layers when we use the term culture. There's the culture internally amongst the staff, with board members, with the community partners.
Yes.
A response.
So I have a lot to say about this one. So one of the things, I don't even know where to start because I have so much great stuff I want to talk about with Jonathan's actual onboarding and immersing him in the culture. So first thing I want to say is that, as soon as the board made the offer and we knew that Jonathan was coming on board, myself and our executive assistant, we kind of went to work on this transition checklist. And this was like a 4-page document that we worked with the board on about everything that we needed to make sure that happened over this transition. And it was big stuff, right? With who did Jonathan need to meet in the community and community partners, and meeting with the board and getting things, up to speed on the board side, but also internally, what did he need? I mean, it was his equipment, it was his business cards, it was his calendar, it was just, it was everything. And so we met with Jonathan almost a full month before he started to start working on that. So that really, I think, and I got to give credit to my executive assistant from my last organization, because don't reinvent the wheel if it's already out there. She sent me all the transition stuff from my last organization that I was able to adapt for SDYS. And so that transition checklist was literally like a document we were checking constantly. And it was a shared document that we have all had access to. So we knew where we were in the process with all these different things to get Jonathan onboarded. And also, it just happened the time that Jonathan was hired into the agency was just, I guess, a cool time in the community where there was a lot of events going on. So before Jonathan even stepped in his office on day one, the executive team had already been together at 3 different events. So we went to an event with the San Diego Housing Federation. We went to an event for a Workplace Excellence Awards with my HR association, and we were all at Walter's Gala together. So Jonathan was already integrated within our leadership team and got to know us. And we were out there in the community networking, and people were getting to know us as a team before he even came in the door. And that timing was just so perfect, and how it lined up and how we were able to get to know him and he was able to get to know us as his leadership team. He had questions that he asked us. And especially with the Workplace Excellence Awards, it was really cool because I submitted us as a finalist. We didn't get an award, but we were still recognized as a finalist. And the application was this really super involved application of ways that HR supports the business goals and the mission of the agency, and how the CEO and the CHRO work together effectively. And I was able to deliver that narrative and application to Jonathan weeks before he started, so he could already get an idea of what the agency was like. And having that time with him, I mean, literally when he walked in the door on day one, it was like seeing an old friend, because he already knew us and he already knew about the agency. It just happened so perfectly and seamlessly.
That the opportunity to build the trust prior to his first day just amongst leadership was huge. And
it was huge.
Making sure you were jumping off on the right feet together and sync. Now, with that, if you could, high level, short and sweet, that sounds like an incredible application you put together on behalf of the organization. But it really coincides with the question I had next about, it's so great when new leadership comes in and they bring in fresh perspectives.
Yeah.
It's amazing. However, there is always that delicate dance of having to balance the fresh, new, innovative perspectives while maintaining focus on the organization's core values, positive culture, avoiding any mission creep. So in your role as CHRO, how do you really establish that level of communication with this new leader to say, yes, we're excited to have you. We are open to innovation, but we have core values. And in the case of San Diego Youth Services, we have a great culture. We have big staff. We're ready for this, but we want to preserve the legacy of the culture our previous CEO established. And what a great opportunity you have to enhance it, to strengthen it. So how did you navigate that conversation? Or did you yet?
I think we have it probably every day, actually. So at SDYS, we always, one of my favorite sayings, and our chief program officer says it all the time, is that we stand on the backs of those that came before us, right? And I've mentioned this a few times, is that the agency was not broken, right? Like we don't need change. We just need to evolve. And so Jonathan, he was already in the homeless and unhoused space in San Diego, and actually throughout the state. So just by Jonathan's hire in itself, like we already knew we were getting someone that was dedicated to the mission and our vision, and already demonstrated the values that we had, because he was already immersed in the work for the past 15, 16 years. So I feel like we got really lucky in that we were already starting from a great place from day one. And Jonathan made it very clear when he came in, he was like, I'm curious and I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And I think Jonathan and I, the two of us, we developed it was a cool relationship in that, he would say, well, I mean, he's so funny because he pops in my office all the time and he was like, I have a question to ask you. And I love how he does it because I know that he wants to know how we did it before, but not because we need to do it that same way, because he's really taking into consideration how we did it before or how Walter did it, and then how we're going to do it going forward that, makes sense to Jonathan and how he works, but how he can move us forward and evolve us. And I just think that he's constantly asking those questions and taking into consideration how we've done it before and how we can do it better, to the point where he's asking me these questions and I'm like, oh, wow, like no one's asked me these questions before. And so it makes me want to work even harder and like be able to have those answers for him, which just gives him the data to work with and going forward. And I just think that's really special that you have a CEO coming in that knows that he doesn't need to change a lot, but knows that we can up our game in so many different areas.
It's special and it's good leadership, right?
It is.
It's really good leadership. So with that, you're dying to share. Let's talk onboarding. So really, what's working? We're 8 weeks in, new leadership at the helm. What aspirations do you all have for leadership development? What's the employee engagement been like for Jonathan? What's the stakeholder engagement been like? You kind of tapped on that a little bit with the tour of events you all went on with him. Board engagement, how will this evolve the organization? What transition did you set the stage for him with future growth, continued success, all the things HR does to onboard your CEO, and at the same time, focusing on Jonathan's transition, but focusing too on the team. Now we're 8 weeks in with a new leader, navigating this, maintaining excitement while still, I imagine, Kristen, still fostering that level of transparency, effective communication. The process is not over. It is just now entering its next evolution.
That's right. So, and I probably should have mentioned this before, but one thing that was really cool is that when Jonathan was hired and we were thinking about how to make that official announcement to the staff, and the board agreed that Walter should actually be the one that made the announcement to the staff of Jonathan's hiring. And I just thought that was so special. I had never seen that before because I felt like this was the board's thing. Like they were super proud and excited with this candidate that they had hired, but they let Walter make the official announcement to the staff. And so when that email came out from Walter that Jonathan was going to be our new CEO, that immediately the staff was like, oh, Walter's bought in. He knows this guy. Like, we're good, right? Like, we've got this. And I just think that was a small but so significant token of appreciation from our board of like how it should be done that I was really thankful for. And then when Jonathan started, so Jonathan and Walter had known each other in the community a little bit, not close, but they immediately developed a super strong relationship. And we decided, or actually Walter and Jonathan decided together that Jonathan's first day was going to be actually the first day of what we have it's our annual staff appreciation week. And so Jonathan starts out on day one of staff appreciation week. And for the first 3 days, him and Walter go and they tour all of our sites. And Jonathan is able to meet the staff that are at the sites. He's able to see every single one of our programs, every single one of our sites. And then actually it ended up that the second day of their tour, it just happened. It was like twin day as part of Spirit Week. And Jonathan and Walter dressed as twins when they went out to all these different sites. And like, yeah, like, where do you say, like, make it fun, right? Like, we're doing this in a way that's honoring Walter and welcoming Jonathan, and we're doing it together. And it just like could not have come together perfectly. And so they spent the 4 days doing that. And then the last day of Spirit Week was a huge staff volunteer appreciation event. We have it every year. All of our staff and volunteers, we go out to a park. It's a day of bonding and self-care and food and drinks and games. And so Jonathan got to go there. And, you know, by the time he got to that 5th day, he had already established relationships with so many staff because he was on that tour for the week. Jonathan and Walter are both runners. And so we actually did a literal baton toss at the staff appreciation event to show the significance of like, this was it, you know, Walter. I mean, they couldn't have done it better. Like they actually ran and like passed a baton like they were in a marathon.
The choreography.
The choreography I was so impressed with. And Jonathan now has that baton displayed in his office. And so that was just such a great, like, symbolic approach to how we were going to go forward with this, right? Like we were honoring our past, but we were excited for the future. And because, and so just going forward and thinking about, you know, evolving and leadership development is, you know, because I think because Jonathan is so involved in the community also, and he knows the players and the organizations, is that he's just going to be able to build on our strengths and be out there and get us out there in the community even more and involve us. And he just comes in with great ideas because he was with an organization similar in what they do, but it was much larger and they had a much larger budget. And so he's just constantly giving me different ideas as to what they did and how we could scale it to the smaller population that we have in SDYS. And that's leadership development and looking at how staff can see the agency on a global perspective instead of them just, you know, so focused within their own program. How do all the programs connect throughout the agency? And Jonathan just brought that because he came from such a big spread out agency and they really had a global focus. And so he's able to bring that here and we can scale it to our size. So, you know, I think I shared with Jonathan that we're a strong organization. We do really meaningful work. We have such a great reputation in the community. And we're so fortunate to have such dedicated, passionate, driven staff that are out there to make a difference. And Jonathan he's only going to elevate that work further, right? He's going to bring us new partners, new donors, new opportunities. You know, I think SDYS is you know, kind of a best kept secret in San Diego and what we do. And I think Jonathan is just going to get us out there more and develop the agency and the staff to an even higher level, which we're just super excited about.
That is a great summary of collaboration. That's the key word that was popping in my head throughout this entire conversation today, from start to finish of this search. And even, you know, looking forward to Jonathan's continued growth at the organization, collaboration amongst your leadership team, your organization as a whole, collaboration by and between the board and leadership and staff, collaboration with you and your previous employer. Why reinvent the wheel? Bring some of the tools that they had over to San Diego Youth Services, similarly as Jonathan is doing from his previous employer, bringing over some tools and strategies that worked there, and just customizing the approach for your organization. I'd be remiss not to acknowledge the obvious, and let me share this question that came up. You know, not every organization is fortunate, like San Diego Youth Services has been, to have such a positive experience from start to finish for your search. A beloved leader, a good process and intentional engagement. Here's the question. How would any of this guidance be different when a beloved leader leaves abruptly or not by choice? So hypothetically speaking, I say, how would you address that?
So with that, as soon as I saw that question, I think I keep coming back to the consistent messaging that needs to come from the board and the remaining leadership team, that the work is going to continue. That, the leadership team is going to do what we need to do to be in alignment, to make sure that this organization continues to run smoothly, no matter who's at the helm, or if no one's at the helm, and you just have your leadership team. I mean, that is, I think, what has just worked so well for us is that constant messaging. And I think it works either way, whether you have this intentional, lovely transition runway, or whether someone's leaving abruptly, is you just get out in front of it and like, we're going to do what we need to do to find the next leader. But the work is continuing. We're still working towards that mission. Or if you're in for profit, we're still building those products and getting it out there and still making the money, right? Like, that's the messaging from the board, from the leadership team. And you just have to get out there constantly. Like, it is business as usual for your staff to know that they don't need to be concerned about it and want to go off and find another job because they're anxious about what could happen with this business. They don't need to be anxious because the leadership team has it, and they're going to make sure that there's continuity of business.
That's great. And I'd say, the way you started this conversation and to the question of if it's not by choice or it's abrupt, the mission the board has at that point in time does not change. It's still one of the most important roles they have as a board, and that is to find the next effective leader for the organization, which then should coincide with everything you did, right, Kristen? Everything we spoke about this afternoon, making sure leadership is on the same page, that strengths and weaknesses are identified so you can collaborate effectively. Make sure that you are taking the time for effective communication with your team and stakeholders. You're setting the tone for the search. And if it's a not by choice or an abrupt separation, that requires even more intentional communication, time, and planning. Involvement with staff. Change is change, whether it's positive or negative. There are going to be emotions. There's going to be anxiety. So taking the time to pause, acknowledge them, address them, and really ensure that you are engaging with the staff.
That's right.
And that they're being listened to and heard. I will repeat that again, listened to and heard, because they are two different actions there. And taking the time to acknowledge everybody that has a role in this process, in this search. The transparency continuing from start to finish and even into the future with new leadership. And something I love that I would love to close on here, Kristen, that you said time and time again at the end when you were talking about the onboarding of Jonathan and the departure of your beloved leader, was ensuring fun. And that is a critical piece to a successful search, is ensuring that there is an element of fun in it, that it's not just a robotic process happening, that it is human lives are at stake here. I'm not going to be dramatic, but I'm going to be dramatic here. And these are our work lives. These are the lives of the clients. The livelihood, and it's the livelihood of your volunteers and your donors that are contributing a significant amount of time and money. You want it to be fun in a way that can be fun, that's appropriate, professional. So thank you, Kristen. This has all been such a great conversation. Our hope is that in future months, we will have Jonathan on as a guest to book a conversation, hear from his perspective.
Love that.
Process worked, what went well, what didn't, and then really hear how he is doing in his new role of CEO at San Diego Youth Services, and to offer the perspective as a newly placed CEO following the retirement of a beloved. So we'd be remiss not to acknowledge Walter one last time for his time and dedication, years of service to the San Diego community. And Kristen, we have to acknowledge you, the incredible work you're doing as CHRO at San Diego Youth Services. And if I can share great news that you are the incoming president for San Diego SHRM, is that correct?
Yes, in January. That's right.
Very good. Well, congratulations. And viewers, thank you for tuning in this afternoon. If you have more questions, feel free to drop them on LinkedIn. Kristen or myself would be happy to respond accordingly. And stay tuned for our next guest. We hope to have an active candidate on an episode in the future to give the perspective of what it's like navigating the job market today. So Thank you again. And I hope you all have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks, Tori.